Welcome to the Sound Relief Podcast. I'm Dr. Julie Pretzman, audiologist and founder of Sound Relief, Tinnitus, and Hearing Centers. With over 20 years of experience, I've helped thousands find relief from tinnitus and hearing challenges. On this podcast, I'll break down the latest research, share expert insights, and offer real solutions to help you take control of your hearing health. If you're looking for answers, hope, and a path to relief, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Joining me today is Dr. Leah Mitchell, our audiologist in Westminster, Colorado. And I was just looking at the calendar, Leah, and I think this November will be, correct me if I'm wrong, 10 years that we've been working together.
Yeah, it's funny. That just popped into my head today because of somebody else's anniversary. And I was like, how long's it been? I'm like, yeah, I think a solid 10 years.
Oh my goodness. We've seen a lot of change in the past decade, haven't we?
Yeah, for sure. It's
crazy.
And a lot of good things.
Yes. Lots of good things and excited for the future. But today, I'm excited to talk to you about an article that was recently posted online, and the title just immediately caught my attention, right? The title of this article is, "For Tinnitus Sufferers, Coffee and Apples Could End the Misery." And I thought, wow, we need to talk about this because as we both know, there's a lot of misinformation out there, right? So you just read that title, you'd think, okay, I'm going to drink a bunch of coffee, eat a bunch of apples, and my tinnitus is going to be gone.
Right. Yeah. Definitely good clickbait because it's like, okay, how's that going to work? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. How's this going to work? So before we get into the background of this topic, can we just spend a minute explaining why, even just in the title, we don't really like to refer to people as tinnitus sufferers? Why would that word kind of irk us at times?
Well, suffering, that just kind of sounds like there's not a choice and there's nothing that you can do and that it's a constant suffer, where it doesn't have to be. We can have tinnitus and not suffer from it. And that's what we do every day, is help people to not be having the impact from it. But yeah, suffering, that's such a strong term when, our patients are going to disagree with that. They're not suffering all the time.
Right. And there's probably millions of Americans out there that would say, hey, I have tinnitus and I don't suffer at all. I just block it out naturally. So we do know there's these various types of tinnitus that are intermittent or constant, non-bothersome, bothersome, persistent, not persistent. So it's interesting to see these types of articles just want to kind of lump everybody into the same bucket and not really
right. And
realize
a person can have a bad day or a bad couple minutes with tinnitus, but that should not give this label of I am a tinnitus sufferer. That's not it.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. So no, tinnitus is a symptom. We can help people with it. We don't want people to suffer alone. That's for sure. So I'm glad you're here with me today to talk more about this, because there's just, a lot of bad information. And I think it helps for us to kind of talk about it in a more realistic light. But they are getting the background for this article from some research from the Chengdu University of Traditional Chinese Medicine. And apparently they looked at 300,000 participants, and they found that eating more fruits, consuming dairy products, and moderate levels of caffeine could reduce the risk of tinnitus by up to 35%. So that was kind of the crux of where they're getting, this title and this information. So I thought, okay, well, let's kind of dig in here and talk about it more, because I think we do have to spend some time talking about diet with our patients and how diet can have an impact on a person's clearly overall health, but also on a person's tinnitus. So, if we think back again over the past 10 years, what have healthcare professionals typically told patients about their diet and tinnitus from your experience, Dr. Mitchell?
Well, and I think it's interesting because, there's been a lot of advances and things that are good, but it's just kind of, it's so common for patients to be told from primary care physicians and professionals that they see, like, oh, well, try this, cut out all the caffeine and cut out all the salt and avoid chocolate and see if that helps. When it's like, there are some patients that their tinnitus can be sensitive to such things, but I mean, the majority of my patients, they're not being impacted by chocolate and by having some coffee and don't have to do drastic changes to their diet, but they get told initially, okay, we need to change everything in your life and we'll see if that fixes your tinnitus, when, those are things that are hard to do. And then I look at it as it kind of adds more stress of like, oh gosh, I have tinnitus and now I have to rearrange my whole life. I've been having 2 cups of coffee every single day for however, and I love my morning cup of coffee, and now I have to take that away. And so that's just challenging. And if somebody has been drinking coffee and not change, their diet hasn't changed, what would make us think that removing something like caffeine is suddenly going to change the tinnitus?
Right. Especially if they've been experiencing it for years and years. And most people, you're right, they kind of get in their morning routine, their morning ritual, they have a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And, but I definitely remember several patients saying to me, I just feel like my life is over. I have this sound in my head and now I can't enjoy anything anymore. And they just kind of, blanket statement for so many people, no caffeine, none of this, no chocolate, like you said. And it just seems like a horrible choice for them to have to make with really no scientific evidence behind it. And then all of a sudden this article comes out and says, oh no, we're changing our mind. Coffee could be the cure. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Why are we confusing people here?
It just goes on to show how much how many misconceptions there are out there. And that unfortunately it's largely because professionals don't really know what to do and what to tell a patient with tinnitus. And so they throw something like that out there to try, not understanding that the impact might just add more stress to their life and has very little chance of actually changing the tinnitus. So
Exactly. And I think it's so hard to eliminate everything from your diet that could be bad for you. I mean, I'm sure there are people out there that eat only clean, only healthy, no caffeine, no salt, no alcohol, no chocolate, no nothing, and more power to them. But I think if you're already kind of miserable and you do have, the desire to have a cup of coffee or 2 in the morning to be part of your morning ritual, it's not going to have a huge impact on your tinnitus. It's not causing the tinnitus in all likelihood. I always used to tell people, if you're drinking 2 pots of coffee, let's talk. Like, let's strategize. How could we reduce this? Another thing, though.
If your tinnitus hits, midday when you're on pot 2, like, well, maybe we'll just cut it back a little bit and see what happens. So
Exactly. And then the only thing that does come to mind here too, is the energy drinks today. Like, I don't think people realize how much caffeine they're necessarily consuming with energy drinks out there. And so sometimes we do have to kind of dig a little bit deeper and say, well, tell me, especially if someone has a sudden spike in their tinnitus, or they'll say, my tinnitus was intermittent, now it's constant. We're trying to figure out the whys behind it. And maybe, have you added a bunch of energy drinks every day?
Right. Well, and a lot of times that can come in, that does come down to asking questions. And sometimes it is like, I have this big work project I'm worried about, and I'm staying up late. And now I'm drinking all these energy drinks because I need to try to stay up, or because I stayed up, I drink more coffee in the morning than I'm used to. And then it becomes a question of like, okay, what's really impacting the tinnitus? Is it just the overall stress of what you're managing with the work project? Is it the caffeine? Is it the lack of sleep? And there's really a good chance it's a little bit of all of that. So evaluating that becomes important.
For sure. Asking the pointed questions, really digging deep into, well, what else was going on at the same time as this sudden spike, and discovering maybe it's multiple factors. And I would think, we've talked about it a lot in other episodes, that stress is such a huge trigger. I feel like stress is a bigger trigger than diet. But so what have you traditionally advised patients with tinnitus to change or keep in mind as it relates to their diet? Anything that you've found to be particularly helpful with advice on diet?
I mean, it comes down to everything in moderation and getting to know your body and your tinnitus. Just like, I'm pretty lucky. I don't really have any sensitivities. I can kind of eat and drink whatever and not be impacted. But I know I'm lucky in that regard, where other people, they can't have dairy. That doesn't mean everybody should avoid dairy, because some people are sensitive. And that same thing comes into play with tinnitus, is becoming educated about what does impact your tinnitus and what kind of tools and skills you can use to combat that. Maybe it's like, my tinnitus does get a little worse with my coffee, but I understand that happens. I still enjoy that cup, and I know it's going to be short-lived, and so that doesn't impact me. So just learning what does impact you personally is important. And again, it comes down to moderation. If you're eating bags of chips or these processed foods, that might have an impact. It just overall general health and well-being is so interconnected to everything. So when we're eating better and working out and just being healthy in general, there's a better chance of our tinnitus being better at the same time.
Right. And no two people break things down and digest things the same. So it's really hard to make these blanket statements of, do this or do that. Well, it's got to be individual specific, because, yeah, like you said, there's definitely people out there who I've met where their symptoms were exacerbated by their diet, for sure. And meeting with a nutritionist is probably the right way to go if you're really having, a lot of fluctuations and a lot of potential dietary triggers. I mean, Who better to help you work through that and with an elimination type diet and then adding things back in. I've heard a lot of people having success with that, especially if you have food sensitivities or suspect that you have food sensitivities. It's really worthwhile to look into that if you do suspect something like that, right? But
and so much of it, I always go back to kind of like our stress or anxiety levels, because what's going to happen if we're going through something stressful? That's not when you want to grab the apple. You're like, give me a bag of chips and some ice cream. And, so that's when you're making the poorer choices. And so again, it's kind of like they all play off of each other. But so recognizing overall what changes you've maybe made in your diet, especially if tinnitus is something that's recently changed. Well, okay, what else in your life has changed? And so then you might find like, oh yeah, well, school started. I don't have any time now to cook the meals I used to cook. And now I'm making all these unhealthy choices. And so then maybe diet's playing a role in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Life can definitely get in the way of our best intentions, can't it? Some days it's just not that easy to make a healthy home cooked meal for sure. But looking at this article, what explanation do they give as to why some caffeine, fruit, and dairy could help reduce the risk of tinnitus? Did you see where they mentioned that?
Yeah, the cochlea, the inner ear, and where the hair cells are that have to send the impulses of what we hear to our brain. It's a very vascular system, so anything that's impacting our blood flow can have potential impact on our hearing and our tinnitus. So, some of it is just supporting, I think what they used is like if it's something that might be reducing inflammation, that could be having a benefit to reduction or reducing someone's tinnitus. And again, it comes back to everything in moderation again, too. If you go overboard, then that it's like things can get better and then you could take it a little too far and then we go the wrong way. So, too much caffeine may not be great, but having a cup of coffee, and especially if it's going to reduce anxiety levels and it's something that you find is relaxing, that could have a huge impact.
Right. Yeah. I think it's all that inflammation and improving blood flow, right? Let's make sure we realize that, like you said, the inner ear only has one cochlear artery. That's it. So if it's compromised, we're probably going to have some impact on the ear, on the hearing, on the
Yep.
tinnitus, for sure. So I think it's hard for people to know, right? What is the right amount? What is the safe level of these? And in the article, I don't think really says what the research found to be the best level. I don't know that they necessarily looked at that, but
Yeah, and I did remember towards the end it said some of the limitations is it really didn't talk about dosage, how much caffeine is the right amount or apples and, how much reduction things cause, but just that there might be a correlation.
yeah. And I would imagine too, where you get your coffee is going to matter in terms of how much caffeine you're taking in. So if you get a quad shot of, 4 shots of espresso in your grande or tall latte, that's probably going to be an excessive amount versus, just a cup of coffee.
Right. Yep.
Everything, like you said, everything in moderation. I think this has been my motto for forever, is telling patients, you don't have to eliminate everything, but could you just see maybe what could be cut back a little bit and what an impact it might have. You never know till you try.
Yep. And it still comes down to, and moderation for everybody is different. My correct amount of moderation and the next person's correct amount of moderation is going to be different on various things. So it's a fine line, because it is something where patients kind of have to be responsible for kind of evaluating their diet and what they're doing. But then you don't want to take it overboard where it's like, I'm eliminating everything and I'm making my life so stressful, then that's going to have a negative effect too. So there is a line of, kind of being observant of what's going on without taking it to a level where you're writing everything down and you're trying to categorize everything and, and we take it overboard too. So it's hard.
Yeah.
And that's why talking to somebody is important. And, having a professional to help work through that is really important.
Yeah, no, I agree. Just to say, hey, do you think what I'm doing is this typical? Do you see this often? Do you not? What is your opinion? It's just nice to be able to talk through, especially I found it helpful when people have spikes, right? So if you have a spike in your tinnitus loudness and you sit down and talk to somebody and talk it through, and we can help ask pointed questions to direct the conversation around, when it happened, when it started, you can really figure it out better. I feel like sometimes when you have somebody that can just help you.
You have to step back sometimes to be able to see what's going on. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Or see patterns. I think sometimes we might not see the pattern ourselves because we're too in it, we're too close to it. And then somebody with a little distance can say, wait a second, say that again. It sounds like, on every third time you tried what you did, it ended up giving you a tinnitus spike the next day. So let's look for patterns, look for, commonalities that maybe the person experiencing it isn't attributing their diet to the tinnitus spike.
Yeah. Well, and people go through and they slowly develop these habits that then it can be thought of, well, this is just normal. This is, everybody drinks this much coffee or only gets this much sleep, and this is my normal, and don't ever step back to ask, like, well, just because it's what I've been doing, is that maybe that's not the right thing for me. And they just need to take that step back to recognize it. Yeah.
Yeah. And the skills and lifestyle modifications that we talk to patients about, do you think just changing some things that people maybe haven't really considered in their day-to-day life can make a difference in their tinnitus?
I do. I think education is so important. It's really hard to feel comfortable with something, or doing something, or experiencing something like tinnitus if we don't feel like we have any understanding of it. So the more you can educate yourself on why things happen and learn what personally helps you to kind of overcome the spikes in these changes, the better. And to be able to not necessarily compare yourself to somebody else with tinnitus, because everyone's experience can be different, and what works for one is not maybe going to be the best thing. The meditation or a deep breathing exercise that is great for one person is super effective. We don't want to beat ourselves up if it's not the right one for you. It just takes time to develop and learn what tools and skills are helpful.
For sure. For sure. And, coming back to kind of summarize with this diet piece, I think more and more people today are realizing that a well-balanced diet, having that well-balanced diet is important to promote just good overall health, good cardiovascular health. Do you find as much time just, needed to talk about diet with patients today, or you think it's more common knowledge than it was when we started 10 years ago, maybe?
I think it's more of like everybody thinks like, oh yeah, eating well is going to make me live longer and look better and not be overweight. But then recognizing how our diet or stress levels and all these things are really interconnected with more than just what you might look like and your weight. And, it can creep in and impact these other finer details of your life too. I think that's really what patients are becoming more and more aware of.
Right. It's not just the pounds on the scale or, the dress size. It's more about how do I feel and what symptoms maybe can I manage better if I eat better.
Yeah, just like your quality of life and feeling better in a day can be can be better when you're eating healthier, and it's not because of the number on the scale, like you said. It's just it's an overall feeling, and it's that internal feeling that's going to guide how you go through your day.
Yeah. I think it is. It's definitely an important topic for us to cover with people when they're experiencing bothersome tinnitus, and but the title's a little misleading. Just coffee and apples. Okay, that would make my life a lot easier if I could just survive off coffee and apples, huh? But I don't think that's really the intent.
The word misery and sufferers, and it's like, well, it's not. The title is just to grab your attention, and then you dig a little deeper.
A little dramatic title here.
It still sparks conversation, so that's good.
Exactly. Because education, like we always say, is power, right? The more you know, the better off you'll be, because it won't be such a mystery anymore. Right. So, yeah. Speaking of which, what is a common misconception that people have regarding tinnitus when they're coming in to see you? What do you think is the most common misconception that you are educating people about with their tinnitus?
I mean, so many just come in very skeptical because they've already asked somebody and been told there's nothing you can do about it. And so I think it's over, but I feel like it's pretty easy to get over that hurdle, because once patients are educated on how the ear works and why tinnitus occurs in the first place, then how it can be managed and treated makes sense. And there's like a definite sense of relief. So I think, just the biggest thing, it does still go down to like people getting told there's nothing you can do about it, and so it's like, well, everybody who told you that before, I want you then to go back and talk to them and encourage them not to say that anymore, and tell them that there's options.
Right. Exactly. And just to know that, they don't have to be alone and suffering. And if they're in that place, it's not necessary. We can come alongside them and give them the tools like we're talking about, and not any one tool is going to work for every single person the same way. So it is a unique situation I think we find ourselves in with many patients, trying to help guide them down that path. But what would be your best advice, Dr. Mitchell, for someone who has bothersome tinnitus? What would you say? Hey, here's what I think you should do. What's your best advice?
Educate yourself, speak with a professional, avoid just going to the Dr. Google, and searching something. There's, you get really, there's some terrible advice out there, which only adds to more frustration. So, speak with someone who specializes in tinnitus treatment so that you can just start the journey with a really good education, not just getting told what to do, but actually understanding the why.
So important, so critical, because if we don't understand the why, then there's limited motivation behind the recommendation, right? So,
Yep, absolutely.
yeah, I agree with you. I mean, and today, like you said, Dr. Google, it's so easy to just go online, put in a symptom, you get out, all this information, and half of it doesn't even apply to you. But you could read it all and think, oh my gosh, I must have a brain tumor or something. It's like, no. That happens in very small percentage of cases. Like, let's take a deep breath. Let's talk to someone, like you said, a professional with experience in this that can direct you to where you need to go if there are any underlying medical concerns that need to be ruled out or looked at. But having that partner, I think, to work with is so critical in this whole tinnitus journey, as we like to talk about it.
Well, and we're working with patients with tinnitus all the time. And so I think it's just so nice for others to be like, okay, I'm not alone in this. It's, even though somebody's story and experience is still unique, they're still not alone in experiencing something that we're not familiar with.
Right. Exactly. And lastly, can you share with our listeners maybe an interesting case? I'm kind of putting you on the spot because we didn't talk about this at all in advance, but can you think of a success story? I think we need to talk more about patients that had a great success of overcoming some of the symptoms that they were experiencing due to tinnitus. Do you have a recent example of a success story that you could share with us?
I mean, I saw somebody just today that and nothing crazy unique with their story, but it was just a couple of patients today. I mean, a 3-month follow-up, and just hearing him say, you know what, I'm not thinking about my tinnitus through my day anymore. I don't feel angry at it and frustrated. And just hearing how surprised they were to experience this is big. It's something where it's normal to go into something like tinnitus treatment and be a little bit skeptical, even when you get the background and the education and everything that we give them. And it's once they start seeing results, that's the icing on the cake for us, and it happens every day. Just a phone call. I have a patient who is just doing a demo with some devices, and they're just shocked that it's easy and that it's comfortable and that they already feel better. And so that's really the biggest thing is every day I'm hearing that.
Yeah, it's so rewarding, right? When you can see these people say, it was making me angry, I didn't even realize it. And I think that's common, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people, when you're in that fight or flight mode, trying to flee from an internal noise that you can't get away from, naturally you're going to be more short-tempered and more frustrated and potentially triggered to go straight to anger. But when you calm that nervous system down, right? When you can see them not having that reaction or response, and then at 3 months say, gee, I didn't realize how angry I was all the time. Now I'm like a different person. It's great.
Yeah. Well, and family recognizes it. I still remember, because most people would talk about their family saying, or the spouse or somebody that comes in and they'll make comments about how much more relaxed they feel and stuff like that. But I still remember a patient way back that he's like, ever since I started doing this, my coworkers say I'm a much more pleasant person to be around. And so and he was just so shocked. And he's this big old kind of, rough looking guy. And he's like, I don't know, everybody likes me better now. And so I mean, that one sticks in my head all the time.
Oh yeah. And you could imagine being in that work environment, like, wow, what is he doing? I need to do what he's doing, because he's like a totally different person now, showing up to work more relaxed and easy to be around. So that's saying something, right? Because we live in a stressful world, that's for sure. And so anything we can do to help calm and soothe, right? These are the things we're always talking about with patients. Let's try to calm and soothe your nervous system so we can get this under control and get you back on track. So yeah, it's great to be able to see it firsthand. And, you know, it's just so interesting because we have people that will watch our YouTube videos and still comment, you know, there's nothing that can be done for tinnitus. Why are you saying there is? There's no cure. And it's like, okay, just because you can't cure something doesn't mean you don't treat it. We treat diabetes every day. We treat cancer every day. You can treat tinnitus. It's possible. You can get into long lasting tinnitus remission if you just have the right guidance and support. So, that's really why we're doing what we're doing, right? Is to try to show people that there's a way to experience relief for sure. And, Dr. Mitchell, anything else that you would love our listeners to know? Know about you maybe, or about the work you've been doing there in Westminster for the past almost 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years. It's going good, and everything's going really well. And, you know, it's just surprising how, I mean, there's still so many patients that need help and have been misguided. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. Even though we see advances and patients are getting help, there's still such a large number of patients that are still stuck getting misinformation. And so we're not going anywhere. We're here to help.
We're not going anywhere. And we just love to, keep learning and seeing what technology will bring next. Any technology that you're looking forward to, or anything currently that you really feel like is a lot better than we used to have?
I mean, I love patients having more control, and, you know, it's kind of a combination of things. A lot of times with devices, when we're addressing hearing and tinnitus, I want it to be as automatic as possible, and patients to not need to adjust things, which is great. But then being able to have a little bit of flexibility for certain environments that they're in, or to be able to have a way to respond to spikes in their tinnitus and do it easily is great. As far as on the Bluetooth realm of things, you know, a lot of times we'll have patients' hearing devices are paired with their phones, and that we've been doing for a long time, and patients love it. But Auracast is a whole nother way that I feel, you know, our patients are going to be more and more connected to the things that are important to them, whether, you know, they're going to plays or they're at the airport and struggling to be able to hear the announcements from their gate. Auracast is going to be something that is available in their devices, but is still kind of getting out there as far as where you're going to be able to access it. But I'm excited for it.
Yeah. Auracast does sound like it's going to be the next best thing. And I mean, do you think it's intended? Well, maybe it's not intended to, but it sounds like it will replace the need for telecoils in hearing aids and the telecoil looping of facilities like churches and, like you're saying, airport. I mean, it's just, I think we hoped that everything would be looped at this point in time so that people could use a telecoil and a hearing aid to have direct audio input into the sound system of that environment, but it just never panned out. And so it sounds like with Auracast, because it's Bluetooth, it'll be less expensive because you have a Bluetooth transmitter versus having to loop the whole building, right? So do you think that's kind of where that's going? Is that the feeling you're getting?
Well, and it's going to be able to be something that is going to benefit not just patients that have hearing aids, but anyone using earbuds. And so I think just another way our patients with hearing aids are being able to be integrated just like somebody who doesn't have hearing devices is a huge benefit.
True.
They don't
True.
have to they don't have to do something special in order to get access to the same things that somebody that has normal hearing or is using earbuds would have.
Yeah, and you're right. And I totally didn't even think about that, but that's why it's going to be so much more popular, is because everybody has Bluetooth headphones these days, whether it's an earbud or over the ear headset via Bluetooth. And then you'll just be able to go through your Bluetooth settings on your phone, right? I think, and find the channel, so to speak, the Auracast channel, and stream the channel you want. So yeah, that is exciting. I am excited about that. And you're right. It will potentially reach so many more people because they're not just making it for hearing impaired
Yep.
patients. They're making it for
The
all people that
general
want to
population.
stream.
Yeah. So that just means it's going
Great
to take
point.
off a whole lot faster.
Yeah. And I think be a lot less expensive, because I think part of the problem with looping was that it was very expensive to loop an entire, airport. I can't even imagine, because it was the wiring that had to be laid into the groundwork of the building in order to access it. So with Oracast, that's going to be very fun in the future. And to your point, I think, all the features and benefits of technology today are just amazing. And, if anyone out there hasn't tried hearing technology in the past 3 years, you're probably really missing out at this point, because so many advancements have happened in terms of like AI and deep neural networks and 4D sensors and all this stuff.
When I think back to it was less of when I was actually in the field, but more in school, we had the option of adjusting hearing aids using a tiny little screwdriver with a trim pot, and tweaking that. So we had very limited control. And now today it's a whole new ballgame.
Yeah, the control is endless, right? And now giving, like you said, in some cases we want patients to have control because maybe they have background in audio engineering, or they understand basic acoustics and want to control pitch and intensity levels and do those things. And then there's other people, that are like, nah, I don't want to have to do anything.
Yep. Right? I had somebody today, I want to do this, but I don't want it to have anything to do with my cell phone. I'm like, perfect. Yeah. We can do that. And if they came in and said, you know what, I want to be able to adjust everything, I can say, perfect. We can do that.
Yep. I want to connect.
You can both have that.
Right. Exactly. It is interesting to see, because you're right. Not everybody wants all the extras, the Bluetooth connectivity, the app control, the streaming of audio books and audio, media. Not everybody wants that. So it's pretty interesting today to see. And that's another point. Like, if you know what you want, you're better off sitting down with someone that can find you exactly what it is that you're after, versus trying to figure it out on your own. There's just way too many options. You're not going to know, how to focus down on that technology. And so and even finding a good partner.
And some of those patients that say they don't want that, it's just, they're not comfortable with the idea of it. But then when they have somebody to guide them through it and realize it's not scary, we don't have to do this all at once, then they're the ones that are constantly listening to their audiobooks and paired to their phone, and they love it. It's just that fear of I don't understand how to do it. So once they have the education in the background and know how things work, then they, again, start to they kind of maybe look at, okay, maybe it doesn't have to be a hassle. This actually could add value and improve my quality of life by being able to be a little bit more connected.
Yeah. And to your point, it could be gradual, right? We don't have to do it all day one. Let's just get your hearing figured out, your tinnitus figured out, whatever your priority is. And then we can see if any of the technology's features can make your life even easier down the road. So that's why it's nice to have the partner that you can work with to really guide you through that process, because no two people are the same, right? That's why our job is never boring, right? I always say, never a dull day, because no two people are the same, which makes it fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, I know we are winding down on our time here today. I know you have another patient to see at the end of your day. So appreciate your time, Dr. Mitchell, and coming on and talking with us. Anything else you want to add before we sign off, or do you feel like we covered everything today?
Yep. Go out, have a good day.
Yes.
Make it a good day.
Have a good day. Yep. Be well. Tune in. Share this episode, please, with anyone you know that is either experiencing tinnitus or hearing issues. And we'd be so happy if you shared it and return back to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our channel, and like our videos, our content.
Let us know what topics you want to hear about too. Yeah.
Exactly. We want to hear from you. So thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. We really appreciate you. And thanks, listeners, for tuning in. Be sure to tune in next time.
It's nice.
Thank you.
Chat. Yeah. Have a good day.
Nice chat always. You too.